This is going to be a fantastic session. We alluded to it earlier. It's all about diversity and whether we as an industry are fully embracing it. What can we do to make it better? Who is getting it right? Who is doing the right things? What difference does it make? Why has it become such a big issue now? So to help us answer those questions and to help us understand diversity, how it works and what we do, I would like to welcome to the stage a fantastic panel we've put together. So our moderator is going to be Sam Phillips, who is the CMO for OMG UK and the Managing Director of OMG Ethnic. Please welcome to the stage, Sam Phillips. Woo. Joining her, we have Lindsey Clay, who is the CEO of Thinkbox. Woo. Come on, get into the spirit. We want to wind everyone up. Come on, woo, that's better, that's better. Next, we have Esther Franklin, who is the EVP, Head of SMG, America's Experience Strategy, all the way from the USA. Woo! And then finally, but by no means least, we have a man on our diversity panel. Woo! It is Scott Knox. Please come to the stage. He is MD of the Marketing Agencies Association. And now I will leave you all in the safe hands of Sam.
Thank you very much. And welcome, everyone. I wish that a few more people thought that diversity was a really important thing to discuss, because hopefully by the end of this conversation, you'll all agree that we might just be missing the mark, and there might be more that we as a community should do to look to improve things. So, a little bit about me and why Jeremy asked me to chair this panel. I am, as you can see for yourselves, a woman. That gives me one tick in the diversity box. But on top of that as well, I am also the founder and managing director of OMG Ethnic, which is now the UK's leading media multicultural marketing division. And on top of that, I can speak to another part of the diversity agenda, one that's often much ignored, which is disability, as I have a disabled child and a disabled husband, and there's not many people that can say that. So that's me. I am delighted that diversity is on the agenda, and actually diversity is being talked about quite a lot now in the press, etc., which is great. But when we talk about diversity currently, it is really about gender, and it is about getting women on boards and that sort of thing. And actually what we're here to talk about today is there's an awful lot more to the diversity spectrum than just women, but thank God we're having the conversation about women, because we are so not there yet at all. But we will be talking about, for example, LGBT, multiculturalism, age, all sorts of other things that might cross our paths, which is fantastic. So we're going to have a lively discussion about diversity, brands and marketing. We're going to look at things from the HR point of view, and I'd like all of you to think about whether you can truly say that your company or agency actually reflects what's out there on the street outside your office in the city or country in which you come from. And we're also going to look at things from the commercial perspective as well, because this isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, and better business comes as the result of having diversity sitting at the top of your company's thinking. McKinsey did a study recently when they actually looked at diversity of executive boards. And what they showed was that the top quartile of executive boards in terms of diversity of talent on them, they actually outperformed the market by 53%. So actually, if we get this right, it's the right thing to do, but it's also better business. So with no further ado, I'm going to just give you a tiny bit about each of the lovely panel here today, and then we'll get on with it, and we'll have some room for questions at the end as well. So, to my left here is Lindsey. She's just been introduced, CEO of Thinkbox in the UK, and capable of speaking on many subjects, but particularly close to her heart is the whole area of women. And then we have Scott Knox, who's Managing Director of the MAA in the UK, and he's particularly keen on talking some more about the LGBT agenda. So there's some things in diversity which are open and obvious, and some things which actually you don't know just by looking at somebody, so that's an important consideration too. And at the end here we have Esther, who's come all the way from America. She is Executive VP of Starcom Americas. So welcome and thank you very much for coming. So, first question, which is, do you think, panel, that what we see on TV or newspapers or tablets or whatever media we're working on today actually does reflect society at large today? And if not, because I suspect you might say no, if not, then why not, do you think? And which brands are getting it right in this regard? So big question, but can I start with you, Lindsey?
Yes. Apologies for the way we're all sitting. We're slightly embarrassed about flashing our pants because we're slightly challenged by the stools here. So sorry about that. Hope we don't do any pant flashing. The problems we have with gender. Anyway, so the lens through which I see diversity is women and gender. And but what I've very quickly realised is that you cannot look at the topic of diversity. You can't look at it through any narrow window without looking at the whole thing. Because the second that you start to sort of peel back the layers, you realise that it is a massive challenge across the board. So just concentrating on women and gender, which is my particular topic, I would say women are very underrepresented in the media, and I mean in images, in the content producing media and in advertising as well, but not just poorly represented in terms of numbers, very narrowly represented in terms of the roles that they play. So there simply aren't enough of them, and there have been all sorts of studies done to count the number of women, number of men in newspapers and on TV programs and presenting, etc. But it's also to do with the roles that they're playing. So if you see a leader in any profession, a sports person, a cultural artist, a politician, a business leader, they will very, very likely be men. If you look at what women are actually doing in the media, they're usually there because they're sadly a victim of crime. That's the most likely time when women are going to be in the media, or they will be sort of some kind of sexually attractive object or somebody's partner. And so that's a pretty sad state of affairs, and that reflects down through advertising as well. So in advertising, we're all guilty of very narrowly defining women. There's something called the Bechdel test, which is a Swedish film classification. And you pass the Bechdel test as a film if it has it has two female characters and they have a conversation with each other about something other than a man. So you think that's a pretty low bar. They ought to, but very few films actually pass that test. I think I'd like to apply the same test to advertising. So you pass the clay test. If it has a woman in the ad, she's not in a domestic setting, she's not playing a nurturing role, and she's not there because she's sexually attractive.
Fantastic, thank you. Scott, thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender at the top of any business ladder. I think even coming down to getting this panel, it was a bit of a scramble. I think in the entirety of the UK, I'm one of possibly 3 out LGBT people in the entire Marcom's media and advertising sector. But the interesting thing about actually the portrayal in the media, and there's just two quite simple things I wanted to say about that. The first is that I often get said by colleagues that, well, you've had queer as folk, you've had the L word, oh, we've had 2 people kissing in an ad. I mean, isn't that marvellous? But the interesting thing from my point of view as a user of media, and very much and I hate using this phrase community, because I don't think I stand here very well representing transgender community, never mind lesbian or bisexual, but I would say that what you do need to understand is that whether actually in most media-orientated countries, when something is gay on television, it's a destination piece because it's the one thing that month. And so to say, are we doing enough? Is there enough representation of LGBT in media? The answer is no. But the second thing is actually, and I mentioned this when I was talking to these guys earlier, and that is that the portrayal of LGBT in media. And one of the things I did want to say that happened to me, so I've got 2 lovely adopted children. And we've had those children for 3 years now. We actually were the first 500 in the UK to adopt as same-sex couples, which I'm quite But the thing that was said to us, so we on our last week of introductions before the kids moved in with us, we went to meet the birth mum, which not many people do because it can be quite a harrowing exchange. And the first thing she said as she walked in the door was, knowing that she was meeting a gay couple, she said, oh, I thought you'd be fitter. And so the portrayal of gay men in the media is sort of like not quite as... So, you know, it's not just the nuance, it's not the
word.
fact of, for me, it's not just the fact of are there LGBT, but what is the nuance of that? Exactly the same as being asked for women and for black and ethnic minority representation. Think about what the output is and what that is trying to say. Don't just put up on media some skinny, hunky bloke who, and expect us to all go, oh, round of applause, because we all look like that, because we don't.
Fantastic. Great segue into Esther.
I look at the world through cultural fluency. Coming from America, we've had multicultural populations for an extensive period of time, and so that's been an important part of the conversation. And as we look into the future, those are the populations within the United States that are growing the fastest, and so for brands to remain relevant moving forward, a deep understanding of cultural communities and their contributions to businesses is really important. It's not only important in the United States, it's important when you think about migration patterns globally. So you take Sweden, for example, where a third of the population it has foreign or partially foreign-born heritage. Or you look at London, one of the most diverse cities in the world, which has only about 49% white, and all these other cultural populations that are in there. And you think about the tsunami of culture that's coming into Europe based on the crises that's happening in Northern Africa. So for brands that want to remain relevant and engaged with consumers moving forward in media, are they reflecting the audiences who they want to buy their products? Are they showing images? Are they tapping into the experiences of these target groups that really will let these groups know that they're acknowledged, that they're valued, and that advertisers are not just taking, but they're giving back as well? So that's my perspective on the topic.
That's great. And from the media perspective, just carrying on that theme, what do you think the benefits are to clients of really getting into diversity and understanding it and showing it? And what sort of media opportunities are there? Because I'm very aware that lots of people in this room may not have considered this before.
The benefits to clients are numerous. We can first start talking about the goods and services that they offer in the marketplace. So if you have culturally grounded communities that are coming in, there's first, within those communities, what are their preferences? What do they want? What are they looking for in the market? And are you providing those things that they want today? Not only within the community, think about the influence that community has on the broader society. They're reshaping tastes and preferences. Using the Latino audience in the United States as an example, I mean, it's been quite some time that salsa surpassed ketchup as a #1 condiment. But when you think about Asians in the United States, Chinese is no longer an exotic food. It's become part of our normal sensibilities. So advertisers need to understand what are the changing and evolving product preferences in the market and how they can deliver against that. But in addition to that, consumers are much more savvy. They want to see themselves reflected and acknowledged. And if you're not doing that, they have choices in the marketplace. They can go elsewhere. So that's another thing to think about. And the third thing that I'll mention before moving on is that within your own organization, is your leadership culturally competent? Can they have the conversation? Can they see the cues? Can they recognize the opportunities? And so there are opportunities all around.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to aim my next question at you, Scott, which is why in the main is our industry still so male, pale and stale?
It's quite easy to pinpoint why that is, and that's because of the recruitment talent pools that our industry goes to bring forth people into the sector. And if you look at just from the point of view, the majority of people in any of the agency sector in London are there because when they were coming out of university, their parent had a mate who they got work experience in, A, B equals C, they end up working in the industry. And when often I talk to our member agencies within the Marketing Agencies Association, and you ask them, they tell you that there are talent issues, there's a shortage of really good, bright young people coming into the sector, and you ask them where they're going, they mention the same universities, the same courses. They're not talking about great and brilliant outreach programs where they go to parts of the world that actually, God forbid, we take people from to bring into the agency sector. And there is one agency actually in London that bucks that trend that I just wanted to mention very quickly. And it's an agency called Livity, L-I-V-I-T-Y. They're based in Brixton. And they are more than 50% black in terms of makeup of their team. Now, they are a youth marketing agency, but they make it a point of view and a point of their recruitment policy to go out and work with people who are disadvantaged either because of they are black and minority ethnic, but actually because of socio-economic reasons. They're going to schools and colleges where actually most agencies don't milk round or go into at all in order to get talent. And it would be what recession would be their point of view over the past 5 years. Clients are absolutely gravitating towards them because their perspective is much more grounded in reality than perhaps you might find in other agencies. So it is very commercially sound to actually start to open your doors and to outreach for talent in a way that you actually have never perhaps done before.
Fantastic. Lindsey?
The other thing I was going to say is there's all sorts of reasons why it continues to happen. I think there is lots of unconscious biases at play, even if leaders are actively trying to, it's gone dark, recruit a diverse workforce. There's a tendency to recruit people in your own image, even if unconsciously so. And I think as the audiences that we are targeting get ever more diverse and culturally complex, there is more onus on us as an industry to understand them, and yet the diversity within our own industry is shrinking for all sorts of reasons, economic as much as anything else. So, it's the people that tend to get work in ad agencies are people who've been brought up in the southeast and can afford to, live with their parents while they do a free work placement. Socially disadvantaged kids from the northeast of England can't do that because they can't afford to do it. So there's, we need to actually work a hell of a lot harder at this than we're currently doing in order to shore up the commercial soundness of the industry.
Well, I was going to say that the one thing that I would suggest actually out of this to some of those points, I mean, I work at the marketing agency, we're a trade body representing the industry, and it's really important that all of the agencies in this room go back and push their trade bodies to be making this very high up on their agenda, not somewhere a bit further down. Because the MAA, we've got programs, we're tapping into things like diversity role models, taking people from our industry who happen to be LGBT and asking them to go back to schools and colleges and talk about what they find in the industry. We're working with an organisation called Pitch It, which is looking about actually mentoring people from the ages of 14 to 18 from disadvantaged schools in disadvantaged parts of London. There are programs going out there, up and down every country and every city that you could tap into, and you should be pushing your trade bodies to absolutely get on top of those. Not rewrite the rules and come up with something of their own, which can sometimes come across as tokenistic, but there are other people in other industries reaching out, and we can be part of that and to enrich our industry at the same time.
Great, thank you. America, is it much different over there?
Starcom Media Vest Group has invested quite heavily in diversity initiatives. That's our Beyond Demographics series, so African American, LGBT, Latino, Heritage, Chinese American, Indian American. I mean, all of these things, we have a very deep, rich archive of knowledge and information that's used on behalf of clients to connect with these audiences. But I did want to go back to a point that you made about the youth, because I think it's important. I think for brands that are very interested in millennials and Gen Z, the idea is that, it's a very diverse world, especially at younger ages, and so culture and diversity is not, the misperception is that culture and diversity is not as important to younger folks because it's all about who we are and our generational commonalities. But the thing that we have found and we understand is that culture is very important at younger ages. They're not afraid of the conversation. They're hitting it right on. They're seeing it as part of their unique differences in the world. And for a marketer to be able to really reach millennials and Gen Z, they want to be understood authentically, and they want that to be conveyed in the way they're portrayed, the way they're communicated to, and the experiences that are designed for them. So I wanted to make that point about younger audiences and the importance of culture.
That's great. And I think, from all of this, I think you can see that there are some inroads being made, but we are so far away from having achieved diverse workforces, etc. It's a very important thing for everyone to focus on. So if we're not doing it brilliantly in our industry, which I think would surmise we're not, which industries are doing it brilliantly? Who can we learn from? Lindsey?
Well, apologies for giving lots of UK examples, but it is what I know. I think my business is the TV business, and that has been a lot of attention recently on the paucity of variety in presenters, both on screen and off screen, of gender split, of black and minority ethnic, LGBT, across the board, older presenters, disability. Channel 4 had a whole focus on disability, obviously, in the Paralympics, and also people from socially disadvantaged backgrounds. And so, because there's been quite a scandal about it, a lot of attention about it, they're finally getting their act together and doing something really concrete. And so there's a whole program about getting more different faces on screen and off screen as well. But the things that they have that are so important is the data. Everything comes back to data. You've got to know how many there are. You've got to be able to count them and then prove that you are improving on those figures. You've got to set targets. We all know that we manage what we measure. So if you don't know what the data is, then that the numbers need to be actually published so that everybody can review them and improve them. And I think that is there's some small glimmers of hope in the TV industry now that things are starting to improve.
Other industries that have influenced me quite heavily have actually been, there's in the United States and in the UK, there is two organisations called Interlaw and Interbank, which are LGBT networking groups, and both those organisations, particularly in the US, have huge amounts of money. The parties they throw are phenomenal. And actually what happened was that we met somebody from Interlaw and Interbank, a few colleagues, and we decided, well, let's have Intermedia. Let's set up Intermedia. Let's bring together people from across the media spectrum. But unfortunately, the majority of people are coming from MTV, Nickelodeon, Channel 4, Channel 5 in the UK, and not enough from the agency side. I'm still the only agency person involved with Intermedia, sadly.
Which is lunacy, isn't it?
But this is the thing. We just were a group. We ended up being nominated for a Pink News Award for Best Group New Startup as a campaigning group in the UK. So anybody here from any other country, any other city, you can do this. And if you want to get in touch and be connected with Interlaw, Interbank, or with Intermedia in the UK, just let me know.
Fantastic. And Esther?
So I do think there's a tremendous amount of progress being made within the industry, within the United States. So whether it's in entertainment, whether it's in advertising and media, we're seeing a lot more specialization. What we're seeing inside of the larger media companies is an elevation of competency in being able to take advantage of the diversity opportunity and translate that into growth. I also think in the entertainment industry, when you think about Disney or you think about what's happening earlier today in one of the sessions, I saw Empire was front and center on the screen. And so that's an example of using a diverse experience and cultural insights to really drive network growth and profitability in ways that people didn't even imagine. So there are many opportunities and examples of progress that's being made. What we're looking for is consistency and a continued elevation and a continued translation of the opportunity into real growth for our clients.
I think I'd add to that the companies that I've seen that are out there doing this really well at the moment and have got their teeth into it are the accountancy firms and some of the management consultancy firms, where they have set up groups and they've really recognized and celebrate the differences. And actually it's very out there and people feel very comfortable to be themselves at work because of this. And it's not just, say, an LGBT group, but there's sort of allies, and you can sign up to become an ally, that you're not going to put up with hearing anything in the background, for example, about he's gay, whatever. You're going to actually stand up and be counted on this matter. And again, as leaders, this is really important. So at this stage, what I'd like to do, can we put the house lights up, please? And I'd love us to take a few questions from the floor. Hopefully we've stimulated something. Any questions?
On the edge.
Oh.
Great. This gentleman at the front here? You're deferring. I can't see you, but
Just get
brilliant.
a microphone.
Okay.
Hi there, my name's Archie. I'd just like to ask specifically Sam and Esther, what are your agencies doing to support other diverse parts of your workforce? you have parents, you have people with elder care issues, you have people that have disabilities and those side. I mean, when it comes to diversity, we always talk about women, we always talk about LGBT, but we don't talk about parents and people who have mental health issues and stuff like that. What do your companies specifically do to support those types of groups?
I think maybe you missed the start. We actually addressed that point head on, that actually, thank God we're having the conversation about women now, but there does not diversity stop. And it's really important because you've got to think about everything. So in my company, in particular, for example, I am driving the employment of adults with Down syndrome. And learning disability doesn't get any bigger and scarier to people generally. And actually what's fascinating is when it comes to disability, children are far happier to talk about disability than adults are, and they're unscared from it. So that's the big, meaty project that we're taking on. But we also really do try and look at all these areas. Now, I'm not saying we're anywhere near good enough yet. I'm not saying we're there. But the fact that we're having these conversations, and that I, as a senior leader in the company, making everyone have these conversations, and it's starting to get some really good traction, I think, we are doing it. Are we there yet? No, but we are doing it. We're on it, and we're recognizing that it's important. Esther?
And for our company, we're doing quite a bit in the space. So we have quite a number of employee resource groups. We have Viva Women, which addresses the women's issue, and it covers a variety of topics within that. But to your question, what are we doing beyond that? So we have parenting groups. We have LGBT groups. We have multiple cultural groups. We have fathering, not only mothers, but fathers as well. And so we do recognize that there's a lot of diverse needs within our organization, and so we allow our talent to form those groups so that they have the support, and those groups are supported by executive management. So they have an executive sponsor that helps guide them and shepherd them and advocate for them as well.
Great, thank you. Next question, please. Yes, at the back there, blue shirt.
Hi, Adam from PhD International. I was just wondering, do we risk getting into a world where there's actually a quota system for organisations? And how would you address that?
Lindsey, can we start with you?
And that would be a risk because, so I think we have to take some serious action on this issue. And everyone always talks about quotas as though they're a sort of terrible, terrifying thing, and wouldn't it be awful? And quotas are really unfair, aren't they? Well, the current system is unfair. We don't have great representation at the moment. So, there on gender, for instance, there are lots of brilliantly talented women who don't get on boards and not all of them is because they have chosen to have kids at a particular time in their life.
And I would say it's not about quota, it's about opportunity. Where is the growth within your market? And are you looking at the audiences that are providing growth now and in the future? And are you spending disproportionately against those audiences that are decreasing and not really going to be moving forward and helping your brands stay viable as we move into the future?
Scott, any thoughts on this?
Well, no, I mean, it's, I can see why quotas may work. And again, I don't think there's a particular problem. I think, but for LGBT, no, I don't think it would work because what we're saying, 10% of the workforce should be, of the board should be LGBT, when actually we know that LGBT is far broader than that. So actually, for me, quotas don't work. What does become a bit annoying, I mean, if anybody who's seen last week's edition of Campaign in the UK, I did a letter about LGBT, and then they did their 4 photograph talking heads piece, asking, is the marketing and advertising media industry homophobic? And they only asked 1 gay person, the other 3 were straight. And I thought, what the hell's that about? So again, it's about opportunity. I mean, that would be unheard of if it is our industry racist, and actually 3 white people were asked. Wouldn't happen. So I think the opportunities, and people need to just think about what they're doing and think, is their HR strategy and is how their senior people work and behave allowing an open door policy?
And my favourite quote on this, Adam, is, I don't like quotas, but I like what quotas do.
Yeah, sorry, I meant risk as it was the wrong word, and I apologise.
No, don't worry, you get us all fired up, that's great. Who else? Yes, I can see a hand. Gentleman at the front here.
Hi, Ståle Gjerseth from Mediacom. obviously you're right about the team, but shouldn't we address the recruitment companies? Aren't they the real problem to this? Because they're risk averse when coming up with people for us.
Well, actually, I spent a short period of time actually working at a recruitment consultancy in the UK. I did it because I was leaving client side to go agency side and thought the best thing to do was go and suss out how the good agencies and place myself. And ended up spending nearly 3 years working there. That went a bit wrong. But actually, no, because actually what happened, I remember one time actually putting a candidate forward to one of my clients, and I was getting responses like, can I just say we're sort of a little bit more rugby, less football, which was their way of saying socioeconomically wrong candidate before they'd even looked at the CV. So actually, we work, when you're in recruitment, you work for your clients, and your clients are the ones calling the shots ultimately, and you put quickest fix forward. And so if the open door isn't there on the other side, you'll get the candidates you actually ask for and deserve.
I think there's also a point about specify what you want the shortlist to do. Specify what you want the shortlist to be. I want at least to be 50% women. I want there to be diversity on the shortlist. Then you're not obliged to, you're not forced to hire a particular person, but at least you'll get variety in the people being offered. And then if you spell that out, you're more likely to get them converted.
Exactly. And what's the brief? And do you have to say yes? If they're not bringing what you want to see or what you believe you need, then you don't need to say yes.
Fantastic. So just to close this, because we are unfortunately out of time on our quick trip through diversity. So yes, diversity is about fairness. Yes, it's about equality. But I guess the message that we'd love to leave you guys today is it's also about smarter business. And actually, as people who put things on the screens of the nation or in the newspapers of the nation, etc., I think we have a really great responsibility as leaders of the companies that do that to really grab this one and run with it. It's not always easy, but it really is important. So I'd like to close by thanking my panel. They've been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. That was fantastic. Thank you. Very insightful. Thank you very much.